What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Podium Picks. Sean Woodland and Tommy Marquez here inside the Working Against Gravity studios. And for this week, we are going back to the CrossFit realm. We figured, you know what? We just had a games that featured a pretty incredible finale. So we said, why don't we go back and rank all the CrossFit Games finales going all the way back to 2007? So I think that's going to be a fun endeavor today.
Yeah, oh yeah. It was nice to go back through everything and just kind of relive all of those moments, the moments that solidified someone's place in history or set someone on a different course. And there was so much to kind of dig through that. It was just for my own memory too, my own recollection, just to walk through some of these. And it was awesome. Yeah,
there were some good events that I totally had forgotten about. So yeah, looking forward to getting into that. But before we do that, we want to thank our presenting sponsor for today, Working Against Gravity. Tommy, you and I have talked about it a lot, man. We are in the thick of the holiday season now. The food and the sweets and the loss of gains is on the horizon if you don't stick to a nutrition plan. And if you want to get a good nutrition plan and survive the landmines that are the holidays, go to Working Against Gravity, man.
I mean, it always pays to have a coach, right? It always pays to have someone in your corner that is objective and is pointing you in the right direction, and Working Against Gravity can do that. When you sign up, you get your very own nutrition coach. You get a 100% customized nutrition plan. Each week, your coach will do a check-in process. You submit some photos, some measurements, and you can kind of fine-tune the check-in process as well. You give some updates on stress, on energy level, on sleep, a lot of the outside factors that can affect performance and nutrition and your results as well. You'll check in through their online platform called Seismic, which links directly to MyFitnessPal. So you can just log into MyFitnessPal and automatically upload to your check-in. And on top of that, say you're not quite ready to take the step into coaching, you can go to workingagainstgravity.com, click the articles section, and there's a ton of resources already at your fingertips to start to kind of get you in that mindset of, all right, how can I attack these holidays better? Whether it's coaching resources, whether it's recipes, whether it's exercises and weight loss strategies, whether it's flexible dieting tips, they are all there for free on workingagainstgravity.com. And you can actually explore by topic as well at the bottom. Hopefully that kind of gets you in the mindset. And then if you want to sign up and decide that you're ready to take the plunge, get your very own nutrition coach and kind of put your fitness and your nutrition goals into high gear. You go to workingagainstgravity.com. You click Get a Coach. You'll pick the performance or the lifestyle track, depending on what fits you. And you put in the code ELITE50 when you check out and sign up. That'll get you $50 off your first month. So you can get, I don't know about you, but $50 is still $50.
A lot of bucks, man.
Yeah, it's still $50 in my experience. So the fact that you can get that off while getting your very own nutrition coach, that's a deal that they only do for our listeners. Use the code ELITE50 once again at workingagainstgravity.com.
Yeah, really appreciate them being our presenting sponsor. All right, let's get into our discussion for today, which is our podium picks for games finales. Now, the criteria that I used was I kind of looked at a couple different things. What the event was, did I like the event? What was the finish, or what was the race, or what was at stake? And then kind of how did it look? So those are the three things that I took into account here.
Yeah, no, that's a good metric, I would say. I would say for the most part that was kind of fitting into what I looked at as far as a finale as well. And I think that kind of painted a lot of that stuff. There was also some nostalgia involved there. And some things that I thought were particularly important, but overall it was, it was a good walk down.
Yes, it was, and there were some that, like I said, that I had totally forgotten about, and I was like, oh yeah, that was okay. So I think it's my turn to start. So I will start with, I gotta get my list out here. I will start with my spirit of the game. So my spirit of the games, we're gonna go back to 2012. And it was the girls. And the reason I'm picking that is because I believe other than, so CrossFit Total was in 2007. That was the last one.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, you had Squat Clean Grace. So that was a play on a named workout.
Yeah.
But this was the first time that as a finale, we had pure, unaltered CrossFit workouts, and it was back to back to back. And I think other than, so 2011, they did that too. There was the 3-part, the end event.
The end, yeah.
And then this sort of played on that theme where you had, it was Elizabeth, I have Isabel, and then Fran. And it was pretty cool for a CrossFit Games to finish on the one workout that is universally hated by everyone, and everyone knows how it feels. And that was Fran. So I really like the way that they combined those three. It was a pure test. It was something that everybody can do. They didn't amp it up at all by making it like chest to bar Fran with heavy weights or anything like that. So I just thought that it was cool that it was accessible to the entire community. If you want to go out and do this, you can go into your gym and you can do those three back to back to back, and you can see how you fare. So the girls for 2012, that's going to be my spirit of the games. Now, my dark horse. Now, this was one that I didn't like really think about until I went back and looked at all of them.
Yeah.
And once I saw it, I looked at it and I said, okay, I really like this event. And I think that had they done it more recently, it would have been really cool. And that's the chipper from 2009.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I picked that is because when you look at all these movements, and I'll read them off. You had 15 cleans at 155 and 100. Now, by today's standards, this is not a very there are a lot of movements, but I wouldn't call this very difficult. You would have to change this. And we talked about this on that episode we did with our good friends over at Get With The Programming on programming the games at the ranch. 15 cleans at 155, 100, 30 toes to bar, 30 box jumps, 24 and 20. 15 muscle-ups, 30 dumbbell push presses at 40 pounds, 25 for the ladies, 30 double unders, 15 thrusters, 135, 95. So that's nothing. That isn't nothing. 30 pull-ups, 30 burpees, and then the final movement was a 300-foot overhead walking lunge with a 45-pound plate and a 25-pound plate. Now, again, not a huge challenge, but when you look at that last movement, the way that floor was laid out, because I went back and watched the video from 2009, like they kind of went back and forth.
Yeah.
Whereas later on, once we got into the tennis stadium and then in Madison, you had this linear progression. And I think that 300-foot overhead walking lunge, had you put that in the tennis stadium or even at the Coliseum in Madison, would have been really cool to watch, because you would have seen that race playing out down the floor. And it did at the ranch because you had people were walking that distance. But I like this one because I feel like this one sort of sprinkled in the seeds of what finales were going to look like later on, with some sort of movement at the end that had this race that would play out that everybody could get pretty excited about.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like walking through all of these movements too, and like this chipper finale definitely had some flow to it as far as giving them a pretty stout test at the time, and obviously you could update a few things, and Chase had some good ideas on how to do that. I remember when we talked about it, but yeah, that lunge to the finish it's a staple now, like that march to the finish for the most part. But all right, so 2012 and 2009.
Yes.
All right, we went. I think we went very different paths on this one. So my spirit of the games is the 2010 finale.
Okay.
So if you look at one of the core tenets of this, is where the unknown and unknowable really took a life of its own, as far as a few things like having multi-part finales, as well as having some level of secrecy and unknown about the finale going into it. So in 2010, before the finale, the athletes were sequestered away from any media, anything like that, and they were not allowed to see what the announced finale was. Also that year, I had the pleasure of volunteering and working on Rogue's equipment team, and so we did an overnight build starting after the last event Saturday night, and when everyone came to the arena on Sunday, there was all this stuff that had been built that didn't exist the night before, and it left everyone wondering how it was going to be utilized. There was a big truss that was set up that was ultimately used for rope climbs. There was small, short climbing walls, like little hop walls. There was at the time was probably the biggest rig that anyone had seen in the center of the floor. And then there was big climbing walls at the starting end of the the competition floor as well. And so the finale was actually a 3-parter. The first one being 3 rounds for time, 3 push-ups with a hand release, which is interesting enough because hand release push-ups you haven't seen them really since. And the floor was burning hot. You climb over the wall and then you do 21 overhead squats with 95-65. And there was 3 rounds for that. And it was a 7-minute cap, which most people, I think, were getting capped at that point. Then the second part was 3 rounds for time of 30 toes to bar, 21 ground to overhead with 95-65, kind of keeping some sort of body weight gymnastics movement, and with a 7-minute cap and a barbell movement at 95. And then the finale, which has kind of become sealed in CrossFit lore, which is 5 burpee wall jumps, 20-foot rope climb, a 20-foot rope climb, 3 for the men, 2 for the women, and then that was it. So 5 burpee wall jumps, 3 rope climbs, 12-minute time cap. And the way this was cemented was, first off, Rich Froning didn't know how to climb a rope with his feet. Mm-hmm. So he was basically doing them legless, which ultimately led to an epic fail of him dropping from the top. Thankfully, he was okay. And everyone has seen that video of him crashing down. And ultimately, it's what cost him the CrossFit Games that year. It's also, I believe, Chris Spieler. Let me go back. Let me find it. I believe Chris Spieler won that event. And it was what essentially sealed a comeback year for him in making the podium. Chris Spieler finished 3rd that year after a 2009 where he got cut and had what was considered I don't know if it was a letdown per se, but it was kind of sad to see Spieler not be in that final. Because you remember 2008, he was the leader going into the finale. 2009 gets cut. 2010 comes back and wins in pretty epic fashion. He did win that finale. He went 2nd in the first event and then 1st in the last one to kind of give himself a big push. And it was a huge deal. He outdueled Matt Chan and came from behind to take the 3rd place overall. And Miko finished 5th that year, and there was a close race between Miko, Matt Chan, and Chris Spieler all going into that finale, which was phenomenal. So it was a good way to kind of close the book on that one. And I just thought that was that unknown and unknowable and adapting on the fly exposed weaknesses, which is the point, and also highlighted some people and set the stage. And obviously Graham Holmberg won that event and moved on.
Yeah, so. It also showed why we need crash pads underneath the ropes.
Yes. Oh man. And it was also a big setup for a career there. That was a defining moment for Rich and setting him on the warpath that he eventually went on. So my dark horse is the 2015 finale, and there's a very specific reason why. So there are events and times that I believe help set the paths, and there's this synergy here for a couple of these that set people on the path that they are now, both as the collective cohort of athletes and individuals. So for one, to start, 2015 is the last time in recent history that both the men's and women's title was up for grabs going into the finale.
Yes.
So at that time, Matt Fraser was trying to furiously come back after a crazy blow up on Saturday and losing the overall lead to Ben Smith. And Katrin David's daughter and Tia Claire Toomey and Sarah Sigmund's daughter were in this 3-way battle for the women's spot for 3 women that were not at the games the year prior. So the 3 women, it was like this, whoa, where did they come from type situation. So, and given all of the drama from the Murph event earlier in the day and how it wreaked havoc on the field, it was the most up for grabs that we had seen the games in quite some time for that finale. And then enter the pegboard, which showed up for the first time and CrossFit Games history that kind of threw everyone from a loop, and everyone was wrecked and was unable to. We got to see athletes in an unfamiliar territory and where they were unable to do the work, and that set up a second part finale with the kettlebell deadlifts and stuff that actually had some drama to it, right? Because for the women, most of them weren't able to finish, but the men, we got to see Matt Fraser try and go like just ham on that bike to try and catch and make up some ground there. But after hitting failure on the handstand push-ups.
And I remember Adrian Bosman was his judge, and Bosman told me afterwards, he goes, I thought Matt was going to die on that assault bike.
Oh, yeah.
And he sold out.
It was interesting enough because like both Matt and Sarah kind of hit failure on the handstand push-ups. And it's funny, for Matt, you would never ever see that again.
Right.
And then we got to see this epic attempt at comebacks. And then, ironically enough, the two people that we saw in front were the people that ended up winning, with Ben Smith and Katrin Davidsdottir having these kind of like out of body moments on the kettlebell deadlifts. And that to me was. It got a lot of flack, and this is why it's my dark horse. It got a lot of flack because so many people failed the pegboard, and they're like, "Oh, it's not a valid test, not a great test." And it's interesting because I think people miss the point of the word test, right? They always assume that people have to pass the test or that the test is beatable.
Yep.
And I think there are moments in time. You look at the parallel handstand push-ups in 2009 as another great example of Dave essentially putting a roadblock in there with the understanding that it's okay if they don't fail, because this is a skill you're going to need, and you need to hit that failure on the competition floor when it matters for you to really hammer home its importance. And what we've seen since then is the collective community put another skill in their bag across the board, to where it's not even the games athletes that are proficient at pegboards. It's your regional athletes, your average sanctional athlete. And
they're in gym. Those things are pegboards are in gyms that don't have any games athletes within shouting distance of them. Like no games athletes go to those gyms, but they all got them because it's a great tool.
Yes, and there are people that are extremely proficient at it. And I think that subtlety of that it was lost on a lot of people. And I think it's since you can reflect back now and being like, that was important, because now that's another skill, another testing element that is very valid. And it's funny because it's a very virtuous in its application, because it used to be a part of every gym class, So
yeah, and Dave, I remember Dave's quote about that, and I can't remember where it was, but he said, "Our job here is not to showcase the athletes," which I think is what you're talking about, where people thought that they should be able to do it, so that you would see all this great stuff. It's to test them, and that's exactly what he did with that. He threw something at him and said, "Okay, here's a challenge for you. A lot of you aren't going to pass, but we need to throw that out there in order to determine who the fittest on earth is." So I definitely agree with you on that one. That was a great event too.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get into the podium, let's get into our Whoop podium for the week. Now, this week we are going to look at our average sleep for the week. So we're recording this on it's Friday the 13th today.
Oh man,
boy, in 2020. Okay,
wow.
So we're going to look at our best average sleep for the entire week here in our Whoop group. Last week, I think we did day strain just for the day. So we're going to go more macro view here, and we're going to go the top average sleep for the week.
Yes, these are average hours of sleep, Monday through Sunday. Number 1, Terrell Roberts, 9 hours 36 minutes of sleep.
Man.
Nice job. Number 2, Violet Neekum. Definitely talked about her before, 9:27. Nicole Wojciechowski, also a perennial good sleeper, 9 hours and 11 minutes. Number 4, Sophie Straith, 9 hours and 8 minutes. Number 5, Guido Huiskens, Huiskens. I'm sorry if I butchered that. 9 hours and 7 minutes of sleep. Number 6, Holly Shirley, 8 hours and 59 minutes of sleep. Number 7, Brianna Bankston, 8 hours and 57 minutes of sleep. Number 8, Richie Carey, 8:56. Number 9, Lindsay Neal, 8:56 as well. And number 10, Angela McLeod, 8:52 in terms of average hours of sleep for the week of Monday, the November 9th through Sunday, the 15th. That is impressive. I mean, man, if you guys have some tips or anything to share with our community about how you did it, let us know, because I averaged 7:23, not bad. I got to get that up though. Yeah. I do notice a big difference.
I'm probably around 5 something. So I definitely need to improve on that. Got 6:02 last night though.
Yeah, I don't have any churns, so I have no excuse. But
yeah, they tend to cut into your sleep, and I'm not even bearing the brunt of it. My poor wife is. Okay, so now we get into our podium. And I don't know if this is cheating or not. I'm going to start, but I am going to go with number 3 is going to be Atlanta from 2020. I thought that was a great event. I thought it was completely and totally different than anything we have ever seen in the past at the CrossFit Games. And you and I talked about this going into the event, trying to figure out what that final event was going to be. And there are some parameters that we thought it was going to meet. Probably about, between 7 and 12 minutes. It would have some sort of movement at the end that would be a good visual race. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be anything that you did it would be something that you could do in the small confines, like an arena or a tennis stadium or arena floor. It wouldn't be, on the track and all this other stuff, which we were clearly wrong about. And we made the assumption that the men and women would go separately. So all that was wrong. So Dave took what I think you could very well argue, we can make a really good case that this was the toughest event in Games history. He had the men and women go together. He used, a big piece of real estate there. We had to run a mile, and it wasn't something that was conducive to showing like a good race at the end. Like it wasn't designed to force that. Like when you have a lunge down the floor or something like that, where it's that good. You're going to get some people bunching up, and we got a finish that we're probably never going to see again, ever. Where you had Matt Fraser looking to make history with his 5th straight, running hand in hand with his training partner and the woman who is continuing to write history on the women's side, Tia Toomey, who won her 4th straight. Yeah. And I said when we were talking about Games moments from 2020, that as we get further away from that finish, we're going to look back on it and realize really how special it was. And even though we're still in the same calendar year, but some more time has passed, the more I do think about that finish, the more I'm like, yeah, man, that was really special. And that visual of them coming across the finish line together, that's one of those things that I just don't think we're ever going to see again. But to your point on, that you were talking about with Pedal to the Metal 1 and 2, that was a test that was something that you're not going to do at home if you're average Joe CrossFitter. Yeah. It was not like 2012 when you had the 3 girl workouts that we all do. We've all done that. This is weapons grade CrossFit. This is designed.
That's so true.
Yeah. This is designed to mess people up. This is designed to separate the wheat from the chaff and figure out who indeed is the fittest on earth. And that's the kind of stuff now, because how much these athletes have progressed, that's the kind of stuff you got to throw at them every now and then just to see who is the best. And we had some incredible performances. I mean, what Carrie Pierce was able to do to know what she had to accomplish in that event in order to get herself on the podium. Mm-hmm. The intestinal fortitude that one Haley Adams showed was incredible. And then you had, Matt and Tia basically coasting and Matt still winning the event. So that's one that the more I think about it, the more I reflect on it, the more I'm like, that was really something special to watch. So number 3 for me is going to be Atalanta.
Yeah, I think it might move up for me the further away because I wasn't there and I was watching it on TV. I think it's one of those things it'll like you said, it'll sink in the longer that we're.
And think about too, one thing we didn't have. If there had been a crowd there as Matt and Tia were coming across the finish line, can you imagine how bananas they would have been going at that moment? Like what that would have felt like? I mean, it just would have been, that would have been crazy.
Yeah. Ooh. All right. So my 3rd place is the 2013 finale, the CINOs.
Okay.
Yeah, the CINO 1 and CINO 2. One big reason is because it was the first time we were live on ESPN. Mm-hmm. It was a big live window, and it was what I thought at the time was a great example of between the two, a great example of CrossFit at the tip of the spear in terms of what these athletes are capable of. So CINO 1 was 5 deadlifts at 405, 265, 5 weighted pistols with a kettlebell, and then 5 on each side, so 10 total, and then an 80-foot handstand walk. So you got to see a significant amount of weight, 4 plates on either side on the deadlift, so it looked physically imposing. You got to see the pistol with the weight where you're like, oh, wow, that's clearly impressive. And then you saw them kick up on their hands and walk. CINO 2, 3 rounds for time, 5 muscle-ups, 5 deficit handstand push-ups, and then overhead walking lunge with the axle bar the other direction. So in each time, you got to see them march across the field with this clear line of sight on what they were doing, but you also got this mixture of things that were very skillful and looked physically impressive. And I think it's fitting, obviously that Rich won those and did really well. And that was just a big moment, I think, for the sport. And that live window, having that quality of an event and seeing the best in your sport in Rich being at the forefront of that and showcasing to the world. And I think that was definitely a big moment for the sport. I don't think it's a coincidence that the best year in CrossFit, in CrossFit business's history, came that following year.
Yeah, I'm not shocked by that either, and I'll just continue with my number 2 because my number 2 is the CINOs for all the reasons that you listed. And you mentioned that the kettlebell. They had that cool demon bell, if you remember. Now that was something that was totally unnecessary. Didn't need to do that, but it was another visual element that they threw in there to just grab people's attention if they're flipping through. And we always talked about that whenever we were going to be on ESPN or have a national audience. Is that you need to hook them right away. You need to explain why this is impressive, but they also need to have something that's cool to look at. And I think all of those elements, starting with the kettlebell and then the handstand walking, how many times do you turn on TV and you're flipping through ESPN and you see a bunch of jacked athletes walking on their hands across a competition floor, and then the muscle ups and then the overhead walking lunge at the end. It was awesome. Like the way that was laid out. I think that's where Dave really, as a programmer, started to get into his groove about how not only do we throw a good test at these athletes, but we give something for the audience that's really visually cool to watch. And then I heard this, Tony Budding told me this, is that the reason that they called that event the CINOs was not only because of the rep scheme, but it was sort of a tongue-in-cheek way of making fun of ourselves for being on ESPN because we were on like
the Ocho,
so they called it the CINOs. Now I don't know how true that is, but that's Tony did tell me that. It's like we called it we call it the CINOs because we're on ESPN 8, the Ocho.
Oh, so, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, so there was a little.
That makes me love it even more.
So that was I don't know if that's true, but someone told me that. Tony told me that, so I just think it makes the story better. So I'm going to believe that it is true. So my number 2, after your number 3, the CINOs from 2013.
That's phenomenal. That makes me almost want to bump it up even more. That's great. Yeah, and I didn't mention the women's competition on that. Obviously, that was it was interesting that 3 women that finished on the podium that year, Sam Briggs, Lindsay Valenzuela, and Valerie Volber, all tied in that event. I think they got time capped, but at the same level. So I thought it was fitting that they all finished alongside each other in that regard, and it was a pretty cool moment for Sam Briggs, coming back from injury to win in a big way. And she was that year she was so dominant. I don't think there was ever any question. Like once Annie bowed out in the Open, who was going to win?
Oh yeah, no, I agree 100%. Like it was very clear. It's like, well, going to be Briggs.
Yeah,
as long as there's nothing super duper heavy. But
she swept the season that year. She won the Open, won regionals, won the game. So. So my number 2 is the 2017 finale, the Fibonacci.
Okay.
So this one is it had a lot of the elements of other like the CINOs in particular, deficit handstand push-ups, the kettlebell deadlifts. It was like kind of had some mixture from 2015. Like it took pieces from all the other ones we put together. The lunge. The overhead lunge, except this time with double kettlebells. But this one is up there for the pure visceral response and emotional just wave that it caused at the finish line between Tia Toomey and Cara Webb, now Cara Saunders. I don't think there's ever been. I don't think it'll be hard to beat that as far as a finale and a finish between 2 athletes. With everything that was on the line, they finished 1-2 in that event. Cara passed Tia at the end. It was the closest finish points-wise in CrossFit Games history, just 2 points separating them. At the time, you weren't sure if that was ultimately going to be the decider between the title exchanging hands. And if it did, it was another heartbreaking second for Tia for the 3rd year in a row and getting tracked down by her countrywoman. And then even we're separating now and being like, wow, it was that close. And then seeing where Tia is now, that was almost like, that was almost the 2 years that prior, like distilled down, like chopped down and put into a single capsule in that event.
Yep.
and then Tia was still able to swallow it and keep going, and now she is just rewriting the history books every time she steps on the floor.
Yeah. No, so that'll once again roll right into my number one, because that's the number one for me, Fibonacci final from 2017. And for all the reasons that you just listed. I mean, a great event. Visually, it was awesome. Everything that was on the line for the women's side of the competition, easily the most exciting finish that we've ever had in a final event. And the thing was that I remember about it is, standing next to Tanya Wagner and calling that event, and we, wearing headsets like we are now, so we can hear each other through the noise. But it was so loud in there that I was having trouble hearing her in my headphones. And it was very easy to get swept up in the excitement. And that's what I missed about 2019, about not being able to be in that arena and call the events. Even this past games in 2020 with no crowd. It's you as a broadcaster, you feed off that. You get excited when you're doing a desk show and you can hear people getting fired up in the beer garden. Like that makes you even more excited. And then when I remember they crossed the finish line, and I remember having all the information in front of me and knowing that Toomey had won by 2 points, but I wasn't going to say it because I wanted to build the suspense. But then just double, triple, and quadruple checking my math to make sure that I was right. And then even knowing that there was still, when Dave brought both Cara and Tia out onto the floor, there was still some doubt. It's like, I wondered, is this really right? I had the numbers in front of me. I'm going, because math sometimes and I don't get along very well, especially when I have to do it that quickly. And then he makes the announcement, and then Tia's reaction. That's another all-time thing that you're probably, I hope we get to see that again someday. But yeah, and it's like, man, we used to have really close finishes at the games, and it was cool. We kind of took it for granted because ever since then, it's been over before the final event even started. Yeah. But that was one of those moments that it was cool. It was on national TV, and I remember seeing our coordinating producer, Joe Novello, in the hotel afterwards. And he was just like, man, I don't know how we're going to top that next year. So
I'll never forget. I was at the desk. I was, alongside Dan Bailey, with Brooke and a couple other people, and I think we had Jeremy Austin on afterwards to come on and talk about it. But I remember seeing that, and I looked over, and me and Dan had both had the Home Alone look on our faces, just oh my gosh, and what just happened? And I remember just sitting there, couple deep breaths, and then all of a sudden in my ear, the producer comes in my ear like, hey, get ready. They might be coming to us because we might need to fill a little bit while they figure all this craziness out. I'm like, oh my goodness. Sweet potato fries. That was exciting.
That was a great event.
But yeah, man. Yeah. And then this is a little bit nostalgic for me, but my number one is the only one that could possibly beat it out for me. Right. For me personally, is the 2008 finale and Jason Khalipa's comeback. We won't. I don't think we'll ever be able to have a finale like this, the every second counts type thing. I don't think it's necessarily in the modern sport a way to grade something, but we were able to benefit from it then. And have it. Oh, oops! Accidentally hit Siri on my. No, Siri, I don't want that. And have a winner take all finale, right? Like everyone, the way they staggered the start there. So whoever finishes first wins, and that was kind of a unique take on it. And it was still early, so you could try that. And it was only the second year, but the storyline, it's just like. If you're a fan of sports, you're going to be a fan of that underdog, right? Like, the UMBC Retrievers upsetting Virginia, the 16-1 for the first time. It's the night, the Miracle on Ice, USA men's hockey team in 1980. It's NC State beating Houston for the NCAA championship, Greece winning the European championship in soccer. I mean, you can go back, even the Patriots in 2001 winning the Super Bowl.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson. I mean, you look at all these underdog upsets, and the fact that Dave didn't think Khalipa was supposed to be there in the briefing for the final event just made it that much crazier. And the fact that the only person that got footage was his dad. And if his dad didn't have a camcorder there, we would have missed this immortalized piece of history. Yeah. And I will give the filmmakers credit in Every Second Counts with the way they built up some of the characters. Like, you're like, okay, Chris Spieler has this monster lead time-wise, but can David hold off Goliath? And the Goliath was Josh Everett because he was just amazing. Mm-hmm. But little did we know there was this Leviathan just sleeping that had just been woken up in this young college student, Jason Khalipa, who graduated a month prior.
Yep.
Was at the same graduation that I was at, because we both went to Santa Clara, and was wearing a Santa Clara shirt, that same Under Armour shirt I'm pretty sure that they had in the gift shop at Santa Clara University, and takes it down. And if you think about Jason's place in the community historically, like, that was launched by that moment.
Yeah.
NorCal, his CrossFit, NorCal CrossFit, became a place that eventually became NC Fit. Like, that put them on the map.
Yeah.
And put him on the map, and he became, he's a Hall of Famer in the sport, and it also helped that he went on to back that up with multiple podium finishes, and he's held every spot on the podium. But that to me was that is the moment where I think the significance of the title of the fittest on earth and the CrossFit Games champion had the power to change people's lives.
Yep. And the thing, another thing too is, you remember that he was that NorCal. They had that crew. They were sort of the first sort of workout gang.
Yeah.
They would all hang out and throw down. Like, that was something pretty special. Then you saw that kind of go filter down south. We had the Valley Girls, and you had all of a sudden you had all these people getting together to challenge each other to work out. Yeah, it was cool.
And to double down on that, and this deserves credit too, Katie Henniger now, but then Katie Motter won that year. And because she won the CrossFit Games, her and Bill got married.
Yeah,
because that was the proposition.
Okay.
I
didn't know that.
If you, and I'm pretty sure I've heard them tell it a couple times, and I don't know if it's tongue in cheek or not. But like, Bill's like, yeah, if you win we'll get married if you go win the CrossFit Games. And she won the CrossFit Games, and then Rogue is essentially formed after that. And it's like that union birthed this just behemoth of a company, and this trailblazer in the equipment industry that is now, the premier equipment company in the world. And it's pretty amazing. And it's like those, that is less of a direct one, but it still has some roots.
No, it's like the coaching trees that you see. That guy may not have coached for Bill Walsh, but he did coach for someone who did coach for Bill Walsh. And now he's, that's a good one. There were so many good ones to choose from. And I almost put Pedal to the Metal 1 and 2 on my list. I almost put Thick and Quick and Double Grace on as well, just because it was the exclamation point to Froni's career. But as events, it wasn't anything like super duper special. It was, but it was, they had the isolation like they did harking back to 2010. So that was one that almost made my list. So those two, Pedal to the Metal 1 and 2, and then Thick and Quick, Double Grace, which were back-to-back years, actually.
Yeah, Thick and Quick and Double Grace was close for me because of the moment, the implications of Rich winning that year, and because of the call.
Right.
Which will always be up there. I thought about last year, 2019, in the standard.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I liked the historical relevance of Dave. Once Dave gave the explanation behind that type of workout and why he called it the standard and what he was hoping athletes would be able to do. And I think it was not that Matt needed any more validation, but I think. And he mentioned this in the interview that I did with him. There were some people that were like, "Oh, Matt, we don't know if Matt can handle pressure because every year he's won."
Serious?
Yeah, because and someone's like, "Well, we don't know if he can if we put pressure on him, how he'll do," because all the 3 years prior he ran away with it, and it was like, no, he can handle pressure. He's just so good that he tries not to put himself
exactly.
Like, it's like saying like, I don't want to have to like do this, but if you put me there, I will, and. I think there was that had little snippets in there, like when he got to the bar a little bit behind Noah,
that was awesome.
And that was a moment where like there was Noah even winning that event at that point wouldn't win him the games, but that was the moment that showed you the spirit of Matt Fraser and like, nah, play, I got this, like go and touch and go to pass him and basically.
I wonder how demoralizing that must have been for Noah, thinking like, I'm going to win, I'm doing really well. Oh. Okay.
It reminds me of this is bad, but old school.
Yeah.
When he's like, Wedding Crashers. Wedding Crashers.
Okay.
And Will Ferrell's character is crashing a funeral. And he's like, yeah, I'm crashing a funeral later. And he's like, what? He goes, yeah, dude died in a hang gliding accident. Oh, hey, honey, look at me. Take a picture. I'm hang gliding. Oh, I'm dead. Idiot. I don't know why. I just pictured like, and this is not a knock against Noah, obviously. But he's like, oh, hey, honey, look at me. I'm winning. Oh, I lost. Dead. Like that was that moment.
Yeah, and I think had there been more riding on that event, like that was cool that the way that Dave envisioned that, and the explanation made the event even more, I think, special. But yeah, it was over at that point. So, all right, well, that was fun. That was a good trip down memory lane. Let us know what you guys have as your top games finales and why. I always enjoy reading other people's choices because there's I have them listed in front of me, so I'm not going to forget about any, but I always like some of the rationale that people have behind that. So that's going to do it for this week's edition of Podium Picks, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember to check out our presenting sponsor, Working Against Gravity, workingagainstgravity.com. You can use the code ELITE50, save $50 off your first month of nutrition coaching, and then also check out our good friends over at whoop.com and use the code TALKING15. You can save 15%. For Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.